The following is brought to you by VerticalVet. Rethink your GPO.
Hello, VerticalVet family. I am Chief Veterinary Officer of VerticalVet, Dr. Ernie Ward, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to another edition of Business Academy. This is the content that we bring to you, our VerticalVet members, that really specifically addresses the issues we deal with in clinic, the people problems, so to speak, the business problems, the bigger things outside of medical realm. And this week, I am really excited to bring you a topic that we need to talk more about, and that is really how we can be more successful, have better communication skills, be happier in clinical practice. And I can't wait to introduce you to our guest today. But I first of all got to thank the sponsors of this edition of Business Academy, Boehringer Ingelheim. Again, they are committed to helping us thrive as a profession. And that's what we're here at VerticalVet, to help you elevate your practice so that you can enjoy a better, more meaningful life. Really, that's what it's all about. And today we're going to talk about that kind of life. How do we build it? But I want to introduce you to our guest, because she is going to be talking to us about, you think you know how to people in your practice, you better think again. And I'm super excited about our guest today, Carolyn Babb, because she is one of us, guys. I mean, she is one of those RVTs who has gone on to do some amazing things. So in addition to being an RVT, she's also a certified veterinary practice manager, but she then has all these credentials in leadership and communication and really understanding how we behave in practice. And she brings so many great skills, experiences, and attributes to us. And this whole profession is benefiting by her. And she decided to step away from her role in the clinic and actually help more folks. And so she has StarPath Consulting, which again, we'll have all of that information in the show notes. And I cannot wait to talk about this because, Carolyn, a lot of us that have been doing this a long time, we think we got the people part down, but maybe we don't. So thanks again for bringing this topic to us at VerticalVet.
Thanks a lot, Ernie. I'm really happy to be here. This is one of my favorite topics to present on, to talk about. It's one of the things that brings passion into the workplace, and I'm just really excited to be here today.
And that passion is why I was so excited to have you on here. I mean, we know a lot of the same folks, and you're just so well respected and appreciated out there. But before we really get into what we're going to talk about today, talk briefly about how you got here, because I love the path. My podcast co-host on the Veterinary Viewfinder, Becky Mosser, has a similar journey. But how did you go from RVT to consultant? I just, the brief Cliff Notes version.
I've got a bit of a unique journey in vet med. So yes, I spent 10 years as an RVT on the floor of a big, busy 24-hour hybrid specialty GP practice and transitioned into practice management, spent a number of years managing that practice. I went into HR as a focus specifically within vet med, so locally at the practice level. And then I had the opportunity to step into a bigger role where I was an HR director for a large group of practices across the country. So in my time as an HR director for these practices across the country, I had the opportunity to work with management teams, to work with leadership teams, to work with support staff, and really love the people relations aspect. And so my heart has always been with private practices, independently owned practices. I stepped out of that role and I launched StarPath because I saw a need for bringing resources to practice teams, helping leadership, making things easier so that we can have more fun, ultimately, so we can take care of our patients and our clients better.
And I love that. Again, that commitment, dedication, and we're so, again, appreciative to Boehringer Ingelheim for sponsoring this. They said, hey, you guys want to talk about this topic? We've got just the person, and they listed you at the top of that list. So I can't thank them enough for sponsoring this. Well, folks like me have, for the last 30 years, have been talking about the importance of soft skills. I mean, again, your ability to work within a team, whether you're adaptable and can accept, criticism and direction, all of those little quote unquote soft skills. And to be honest with you, Carolyn, 30 years ago when we were bringing these up, they were kind of met with a question, skeptically. And today we still fight those battles. So maybe talk to us around, I know that you've got some statistics for us, but talk to us about the importance of soft skills in vet medicine.
Yes. So I think anytime we have more than one person in a room, the value of being able to bring high level soft skills really enhances our interactions. So when we talk about soft skills, we're talking about communication, emotional intelligence, our ability to adapt, and to be a good teammate. So, how do we show up in our work in a way that's positive? And so that's what we mean when we're talking about soft skills. And yes, historically, over the years, we haven't had a lot of emphasis on that. And that tide definitely is turning. So some really interesting statistics that I have a slide we can pop up on that. There's a real big need for these kinds of soft skills, not just in vet med, but in any profession. In ours, because we are responsible for caring for patients, because we are accountable to our clients, and because we want to be there for our team, it's really, really important that we place some emphasis on here. So fascinating statistics surrounding this. There was a survey done by Wiley, which is one of the largest research groups in the world, and they found that social emotional skills ranked highest in importance, second only to critical thinking. And even more interestingly, of the people they surveyed, 82% of those people said that their culture would improve with stronger social and emotional skills, with a shocking 77% saying that they had worked in an environment where poor social emotional skills actually led to a toxic workplace. What's really interesting to me about this is that 97% of leaders agree it's worth their time to develop these skills, but only 10% agree that they know how to make it happen. And so, as is true with most statistics, we have all of these facts and information, but it's the how do we get there? How do we actually develop these skills that are so important? And developing human skills is different than developing other kinds of skills. And it's fundamentally different because as we grow up as human beings, we have deep-seated values, deep-seated patterns that evolve as we grow into adult human beings. And sometimes those patterns have to be rewritten. And so we're actually trying to rewrite the way we communicate, rewrite the way we adapt to situations, and that can take a lot of effort and work. And so it's difficult sometimes when we're looking at those skills to know how are we going to move from 97% say we need to do it and 10% say we don't know how to do it to actually implementing something that works.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that too, Carolyn, because this has been my experience as well, and something we've tried to really, advocate on behalf for my veterinary colleagues. And that is the fact that we were taught typically a didactic set of information. So historically, we were trained of facts and figures and skills and those application, and then the outcomes were based on, it worked or it didn't work. And we did not emphasize, in fact, I would argue that we de-emphasized the communication, the interaction, the adaptability, the ability to learn and change, facets of the profession. And this really holds us back because as a practice owner, especially if you go back to my era when most practices were owned by veterinarians, by a veterinarian or maybe a couple, we just did what we were taught. Right? I mean, we didn't know any better. And I wasn't taught this stuff in vet school. And I remember, when we started the Success Club my sophomore year of vet school, which later became the VBMA up at Pennsylvania. So I was at Georgia and we started this thing called the Veterinary Success Club. And then it kind of morphed and went around. And then later, a couple of students said, let's bring this to Pennsylvania. But the issue there was they weren't getting it, and they still largely aren't getting it. And so if you never got it, you don't know how to give it back. And so that's why I think it's super important. I do want to point out one other thing too. When you look at the value prospect of an individual, right? So you go, should I hire this person? Are they worth their wage? Whatever, how much should I pay them? Most often people go, do I like them? You know what I'm saying, Carolyn? Are they fun to work with? And it's almost secondary. Are they excellent at their job? It's like, do I like this person first and foremost? So maybe comment on the importance of developing these skills, within the context of creating value for that individual. And again, I would never, ever demean or devalue our technical skills, but I kind of say if you're an RVT, CVT, if you're a DVM, VMD, you kind of should know the basics of this. All the rest of it that's going to make you a success is probably those soft skills. So maybe comment on that if possible.
Yeah, so we have this expectation that when you are given training as a veterinarian, as an RVT, you come in with a prepared set of skills that you should be able to execute and execute with some degree of proficiency. We also tend to have this expectation that people come in with good communication skills. And in fact, we even say that on our job postings, right? Must have excellent oral and written communication skills, must be a team player. And so we have this desire to bring people into our teams that come in already knowing how to people, already knowing how to communicate. But the reality is those social emotional skills are developed just like any other skill. They take practice. And so we need to change the way we think about those skills because not everybody's going to walk in the door with those skills. And in fact, historically in vet med, we have done a really poor job of training in anything other than technical skills. I think that we frequently say things like, we'll say things like, hey, you're our best technician. Congratulations. You're now our practice manager. Best of luck to you. And then we drop people and we don't give them the resources to succeed. We tell them we want them to be an excellent practice manager, to lead the team, to pull everybody together, to have good culture, all of these things. But we don't necessarily show people how to do that. And so people fumble through, they try and figure it out on their own, sometimes with some level of success. When we're training soft skills, we need to bring in some more tangible tools that show people how they can really reach that level of success and set an environment where we don't expect people to automatically have those. They're not inherent. They create we have to create some pathways for learning those skills and set up a place where people can actually develop them in a way that leads to success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's so funny because, when we look at success and failure in veterinary practice, I'm going to once again remind the Vertical Vet family that we're often speaking in terms of likability, teamwork, approachability, communication. Very rarely do I hear of practice owners firing people, Carolyn, because they were really bad at running the autoclave, but yet they fire a lot of folks because they're like, oh, they're terrible with clients, or oh, she was rude up front, or whatever those issues are. So maybe, again, speak to this training aspect, because I've spent a large part of the last 32, 33 years on staff training, really trying to enhance these skills. And, there's a funny anecdote, there's a story about this, they find this kid somewhere in West Africa, and he's 6'10", so massive, and so he's coming into high school, and the scouts down there, looking around, he says, oh my gosh, I have found the absolute most amazing, kid down here, 6'10", natural athletic ability. Well, they put a basketball in his hand, and of course he fails. And this speaks to the experience, the dedication, the training, right? This kid had never played basketball before, and he was never recruited or anything like that. So go back to that RVT, that young DVM who's just out of school. They're 6'10", but unless we have taught them how to play the game, they're going to fail, right?
Absolutely. Unless we give them the training and the resources that they need to know what they need to do and to be able to do it well, they're not going to succeed. And so similar to your example with the basketball player, we have this expectation that we can put somebody into our practice and that they automatically know how to communicate well, that they have a high level of emotional intelligence, that they can be adaptable, that they can be a good teammate. And so we have this expectation. And then when they fall short of the mark, we get frustrated. And yes, then we have an HR mess. And some of the practices that I work with, that's one of the most common calls that comes through is we've got ABC mess. How do we deal with it? And so it's become a very reactive environment where we need to be able to step back and take a more proactive approach in helping people gain those communication skills. So social emotional skills need to be viewed as any other skills. So with our training program, we need to have some steps and some tools to be able to teach people, what does good communication look like? Not just I'm expecting you to be a good communicator, but what does that look like? Let's model that. Let's give people verbiage and roads and pathways they can take to reach that good communication. What does it mean to develop social emotional ability? Because there's this misconception that our emotional intelligence is fixed and that we can't change it. It's set. You either have a high level of emotional intelligence or a low level of emotional intelligence. When in fact, just like any other skill, we can grow it. So humans have a huge capacity for growth. And by embracing that and setting up that environment, teaching people, let's model this conversation. Let's role play. Let's walk through this as part of our training program. When you're faced with a teammate who's frustrated with you, here's some approaches you can take. When you're faced with a client who's upset, here's some different tactics you might use to be able to diffuse the situation, to resolve it. I know a lot of us do that in general terms in our practices, but I don't think that we take enough of a targeted approach to actually teaching those kinds of communication skills and using resources that are available to get those skills and that knowledge passed on to our team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, guys, if you're sitting there watching this today and you're going, I don't know where to start, I would say reach out to folks like Carolyn Babb, and we can connect you through VerticalVet, or you can reach out at starpathconsulting.com. But if you don't have to, I mean, you can do most of this really on your own. You just have to codify it and actually structure it and set up a process for training. I mean, if you've followed me for the last 30 years, my complete belief in role playing. I mean, I believe that's the most powerful way to train these skills. And so I think it's important. Now, Carolyn, I want to touch on a couple of things. Number one, I think there's always been this reluctance in the medical fields, and I'm going to lump the human medical realm in with this conversation as well, to teach these skills because they think in some way it devalues the medical skills and attributes, which, guys, we don't play a net sum zero game here. You can do both, okay? In fact, the best physicians, the best veterinarians are those that are excellent communicators and darn good at their job. Okay, so you can do both, Carolyn. But here's been my contention all these years is this really impacts not just productivity, because I think back in the day, there still is too much emphasis on revenue generation, which is important, essential to running a business enterprise, but it's patient care and outcomes. So maybe speak to why we should really be focused on training these soft skills, not just in terms of, it's a good thing to do, but really on how it impacts our veterinary care. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge cost to not investing in our people. And in fact, AHA released a study in earlier this year, February 2024, called Stay Please. And in that study, one of the reasons that's cited within the top 3 reasons for what makes people want to stay at a job is teamwork. And so it is valuable, just like our medical skills, and we can do both, and we need to definitely emphasize both aspects of being a well-rounded employee, because the cost of not doing so, we know we have high turnover in vet med, that's not new to anybody, but the cost can be 1.5 to 2 times a person's salary to replace them and train them, and not just training them on medical skills that may have walked out the door with them, but training them on our interactions. How are we going to communicate as a team? How are we going to connect with our clients? Because that's what drives clients away. It's what drives our teammates away. When we don't have those solid connections, that cost is tremendous. And in fact, they estimate that can be up to $1.4 billion a year just in vet med alone. So it is an issue that we need to be willing to open up our minds to change our mindset on a little bit. And really just making sure that we are investing in that and making sure that we're giving people those skills that they need to communicate. And so what that might look like in a team is making sure that when we hire people, when we interview people, starting way back on the job posting, that we're saying that we're providing resources, that we are invested in personal development. We want you to succeed, not just as an employee, not just as a veterinarian, not just as an RVT. We want you to succeed as a human being. And because of that, we are investing time and energy and resources in your own personal growth. And so there are some tools that are available out there that you can look into to utilize to help give that some structure, absolutely. But the real core of it is it has to be an integral part of your day-to-day interactions. This is not a one and done training event. This has to be an ongoing discussion, an ongoing conversation, and we have to have the courage to talk about how are we going to navigate conflict? When things go sideways, how do we recover from that? How do we step back and regroup when we have crossed the line? So the cost of not doing so is great, is huge. And the potential for us to have success as a business is also tremendous if we place focus on developing those skills.
Yeah, and again, I love what you said. This is really about building people, not just a position. And I couldn't agree more. The other thing too, and I know we want to kind of touch on this, is the fact that people have got to understand that these are skills that can be taught and learned. I mean, I have fought that my entire career, Carolyn. The fact that they say, "Oh, well, you're just naturally a good communicator. It must be easy for you." It's like, well, okay, maybe I had a bit of a head start, but I kept working on it, right? I mean, you don't get to excellence in anything, Carolyn, in my opinion and experience, without doing a lot of work. I mean, right when we're recording this, the Olympics are going on. Every one of those people is naturally gifted. Don't get me wrong. But the difference between those Olympians and everybody sitting at home watching on the couch is the effort and the training and the dedication that they put in. So, this is one of those areas where you can do this. Now, let's talk a little bit about this mind shift, this paradigm shift, and back me up on this, that you can teach and learn. You can take that person, you go, "Oh my gosh, they're a disaster. There's no way they could ever go in front of clients or succeed within a team." I disagree in almost all those cases. I mean, obviously there can be that one outlier, but back me up on that, Carolyn.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. To change our mindset from you either have it or you don't, to we're going to give you what you need, and we're not going to expect you to be an Olympian right out of the chute. We're going to give you the training to get there. And yes, there's effort, there's work involved. We have to be able to self-reflect. We have to be able to say, okay, that didn't go well. I need to do better next time. And I am in an environment where that's okay, and it's okay to fail. We have to allow people to fail in order for them to improve. We don't automatically know how to do these things. So yes, some of us are naturally gifted and maybe had a head start. Others of us have had to work really, really hard, and it's a continual learning process. It's not just about, as they say, it's not just the destination, it's the journey. And I think when we're talking about communication skills and social emotional skills and teamwork, it very much is, how are we moving forward in our journey? And how are we continually training? And how are we working with others who support us in that? We want to be with people who set us up for success, not people who are waiting for us to fail. So shifting that mindset from I'm just waiting for somebody to make a mistake so I can fire them, or I'm just waiting for them to one more time. If they just one more time say this to a client, they're out. We have a responsibility to our teams to be involved in their development. And we have to be side by side with them in that journey and helping them learn how to do things better, how to self-reflect, how to approach tough conversations, how to change their mindset so that they're not beating up on themselves when things don't go well. And instead, they use that as an opportunity for growth. and they can then take that information and move forward in a more positive manner next time.
Amen. And and Carolyn, the other thing too is if you're watching this today and you're a manager, you're a supervisor, you're an owner, you have to start with you. I mean, and I think that's been the biggest challenge I have confronted in talking about this for all these decades, is because the person in charge often is the person who doesn't want to do the work. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it out there, but there are a lot of owners and managers that it's just like, if you could kind of get your head right and get your emotional state under control, everything would change in your life. And too often it's them. I have this terrible staff and they're lousy and they don't want to work and they don't want to learn. And it's like, are you saying that or are they saying that? Because it sounds an awful lot like your attitude. So maybe, give a briefly just a little bit of advice to that team that is watching today and they're going, yeah, that's my boss, that's my manager. How can they gently nudge that manager maybe to do some self-reflection or maybe set them on the journey? This is the toughest question, but you got any advice for that person watching today?
Yeah, so I think that really speaks to leadership. And leadership, I'm not talking about practice owners and veterinarians and managers necessarily. I think leadership comes from wherever you are. You can be a leader in any position. And so whether or not you have a title that is a quote leader within your practice, that does not define you as a leader. You don't automatically have leadership skills because you're a practice owner or a veterinarian or a manager. And because you're part of the support staff doesn't mean you don't have leadership skills. So if you find yourself in that position, whatever your title is, where you're having to lead up through others, you're having to help someone see that maybe they need to be part of the solution instead of the person that's pointing fingers saying, oh, that's everybody else's problem. That's not my problem. And so it's those gentle conversations, opening up the discussion and saying, hey, have we thought about this? Or can we talk about doing this as a team so that you're bringing people into the fold, into your ideas, and you're not flying solo out there. So getting that buy-in from the group is really, really important when we talk about implementing anything new. And I think it really starts with a foundation of trust. If you don't have trust among your team, any type of change is going to be really, really difficult, if not impossible. So being vulnerable is the best advice that I can give to anyone coming from any position. If you are vulnerable and able to admit your mistakes, to say, I don't know, I need help, can you work with me on this? That opens the door for others to be able to follow and do the same.
Yeah, Carolyn, I used to describe vulnerability as willing to say, I don't know. And, I think if you're watching today and you're thinking it's them, not me, just say, I don't know. Just start with yourself and say, maybe it could be. Before we get out of here today, because this is just such a good conversation. And again, if you want to know more, either reach out to us at VerticalVet, we'll put you in touch, or go to starpathconsulting.com. Again, I can't thank Boehringer Ingelheim enough for sponsoring this conversation. But what about some next steps? I know that you've got a list of things. Maybe you could kind of go through the steps that you believe people should take if they're watching this and they say, look, I want to improve my team's soft skills. I want to improve, all of those other areas outside of the medical, domain. Maybe walk us through some of those.
Absolutely. So some next steps that you can take. First is all about the mindset. It's about being able to self-reflect. First of all, we have to look inward before we can change anyone else. So having that mindset that we're going to be vulnerable with ourselves, and then we're going to ask others to be vulnerable with us, that establishes trust in our group. And then we talked a little bit about commitment and buy-in from the leadership. Anytime we're implementing something new in our practice, as we know, if we don't have our leadership team on board, it's not going to work. So making sure that we have tough conversations, and those conversations need to be centered around why. Why is this important? Why do we want to do this? What's the impact of doing this? And what are the ramifications if we don't? And then, as with any new training program or procedure or anything that we look at implementing that's new, evaluate different options out there. There's a lot of them. If you need ideas, certainly give a shout, but there's a lot of different resources and tools that are available that are very tangible. so that we can map out a training program. We need to not just tell people what they need to do, we need to show them how to do it. And I think that's a key takeaway from this whole idea, is that we have to be able to show people how to have good communication skills, how to be a better teammate, how to develop their emotional intelligence, how to be adaptable. So mapping out that program needs to include how for your team. And then, of course, communication with the team, schedule a meeting, open it up for feedback. There will probably be a lot of resistance to some of these ideas at the start, and we need to allow people to share their concerns. If we shut those down from the beginning and we don't allow people the opportunity to share their worries, then we miss that chance to really have a good heart-to-heart conversation about why it's important. So as leaders and as team members, we have to agree on some ground rules to create a safe space. So when we're learning communication skills and social emotional skills, it can be clunky. We're going to trip and fall sometimes. And we need to have those guardrails in place so that we're not diving off the edge of the canyon. We feel supported. We know we're going to trip up sometimes, but we have people there with us that are rooting for us, cheering us on, and want us to be successful. And then, as with any new program, we need to have frequent conversations with people. We need to have feedback. So ask for feedback. Don't be afraid to make those adjustments. Adaptability is one of the main social emotional skills. So be adaptable in your approach, because if something's not working, then we need to change it to something that does. So I think when you place humans at the center of your focus, you have that paradigm shift in your team from it's all about me to it's all about us. And us is the team. Us includes our clients, our patients, so that we're having good patient care, excellent client service, and we're there for each other as teammates.
Wow, I love that masterclass right there from Carolyn Babb. Carolyn, again, I don't know who needs to hear this, but there's probably a manager, an owner out there and going, my team's pretty good on this stuff. I don't really see the effort and energy necessary to do this, right? We got it good enough. Maybe give them that last little bit of advice to nudge them into why they should take care and attention to this and start to train. I mean, again, good enough, I don't think is good enough.
It's really about the language of communication, just like any other language, just like our medical skills. If we don't use them, we lose them. So if we are not actively working on improving our skills, they will decline. We need to focus on keeping those skills active, continual learning. We can always be better. If we become complacent, we become stagnant. And then that has ramifications all throughout our patient care, our client service, and our business success. So the mindset of we are growing as human beings, we're growing as a team, that will shift us into the next level of continual learning and growth.
Yeah, and Carolyn, I know that I've been criticized over the years for this perpetual training cycle, right? And here I am, nearly 60 years old, and still trying to improve myself. And the criticism, and you've probably heard the same thing or similar types of things, is well, that's perfectionism, guys. Striving to improve, striving to make things better is not perfectionism in any way, shape, or form. It is simply trying to do better than you did yesterday. And guys, perfectionism, yes, that's something that you really do want to work on if you have that issue, because I do believe that will derail your efforts at some point. But Carolyn, to that person who says, oh gosh, you're saying be better all the time. If you're not growing, you're stagnant. Any last bits of advice on that person again who says, I'm pretty happy. I mean, our practice is thriving. We got a 2-week waiting list for annuals and blah blah blah. I mean, why should they make themselves better?
Well, if they don't, cultures in workplaces are cyclical. So if you're not proactively tending to it, then you're going to be reactively cleaning up the messes. And so we don't ever get there, but part of being human and being able to grow and having that endless capacity to improve is focusing on those skills, making sure that we're moving forward so that we don't find ourselves in a position where we're moving backward. If your practice is in a great place already, excellent. Focus on being proactive so that you can keep it there, because it's so much easier to move forward than it is to try to recover lost ground.
Oh, I love that. And as Laura, my wife and hospital administrator, used to always say, it's not just about growing fruits and vegetables, it's about keeping the weeds out. So I think this perpetual training cycle is just as much about keeping the weeds out as anything else. Carolyn Babb, I can't thank you enough for sharing your advice and experiences today with us. It's just been phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Well, guys, that is it for another edition of Business Academy brought to you by VerticalVet. And this edition was again sponsored by our dear friends and preferred partners at Boehringer Ingelheim. And guys, if you're interested in learning more about how VerticalVet can help your practice thrive, definitely reach out to us at verticalvet.com. If you want to find out more about Carolyn Babb and some of her consultancy, go to starpathconsulting.com. Again, if you have any questions, we can connect you with whomever, because our goal here at VerticalVet is pretty simple. It's to help you thrive in practice. It's to help you have a happier team, better patient care, better client service, better outcomes, better you. So guys, hopefully today's little edition of Business Academy helped you out on that. Again, thanks to Carolyn Babb and Boehringer Ingelheim for sponsoring that. On behalf of VerticalVet family here, I'm Dr. Ernie Ward. We will talk to you soon. Bye.